Beautiful.
Hey, should we sit down?
Let's sit down. Let's get comfy.
All right, good. Do I need to give your introduction?
Nah.
No? Did everybody here know who Aubrey is?
Introductions are always a little weird when someone's already up here. You know
That's terrible. I know. Well, I should have done it if you already got. You want to introduce yourself? Why don't you introduce yourself? That would be even
What's
better.
up, everybody? I'm Aubrey. Some of you probably know me. I have a company called Onnit that focuses on the tools for human optimization and the inspiration behind it. And I have a podcast called the Aubrey Marcus Podcast, and I show up on a bunch of other people's podcasts. But really what I love talking about the most is philosophy and consciousness and how that relates to the body, how that everything is all connected from the heart, the mind, to every aspect of this physical being that we have. And so we'll get into some of that today and have some fun. And ultimately, there's no agenda here tonight. We're just here to be of service to you guys. So we're for sure going to open this up to questions. So if there's any question, no matter how weird or wild or out there you think it might be, shoot it our way. I'd love to hear it. So yeah, just looking forward to connecting with you guys and seeing what we can create tonight.
Cool. Thank you very much. It's I actually did a little bit, probably not enough, but I did a little bit of preparation for tonight, looking into the wide range of work that you do. And honestly, I did not have enough time to begin to cover all of the territory that you inhabit. You're the CEO of a company. What I say is it fair to say it's a supplement company, a nutraceutical company?
That's one aspect.
Okay.
Yeah.
Onnit.
Yeah, we definitely sell supplements, functional foods, fitness equipment like kettlebells and maces and personal care items. So it's a pretty broad spectrum. As long as it can help you be a little bit better tomorrow than you are today, then we'll consider it.
Right. So you were talking, this is really about optimizing human potential. Mm-hmm. The products are about performance, right?
Right.
How would you describe what optimization really means? What does it mean to be optimized in your human potential?
Well, that's always a moving target. I don't think optimization is a destination. Optimization is a process. It's what you can be at that given moment. And I think we all too often in everything that we do get far too focused on some goal that we have in the future, and we measure that by, success is there, or I'll be killing it when I get to here, I'll be optimized when I get to here. The whole process is the win. The whole process is optimization. Success is every second on the path towards success, even when you're taking 2 steps back or you're taking 3 steps forward. It's all the success when you have that intention and have that in mind. The same with optimization. Optimization isn't a linear line. It's learning from your failures, learning from your mistakes, getting a little better the next time, but keeping that as a goal that I'm going to handle things emotionally a little bit better. My body's going to be a little bit more capable. I'm going to be a little smarter when I'm entering into this, puzzle that I'm trying to solve. Mm-hmm. And so it's just about keeping that mindset and at every given moment giving yourself the advantage to bring your best forward.
Okay, so it sounds like it's an incremental thing. It's a bit by bit thing. It's not like, I just did ayahuasca and my entire life has been transformed and everything is different today than it was yesterday.
Well, sometimes it is like that. I mean, it's like the continental plates, right? Mm-hmm. Most of the time, they just gradually move and you don't even hardly notice it. And then every once in a while, it'll get stuck for a little while. Right. Then it gets stuck for a little while and the pressure builds up. And then eventually that pressure builds up and bam, 8.0 earthquake. All the buildings fall down. Everything in your life goes crazy, but something is shifted, And so while it's incremental, sometimes it goes in spurts that can feel like a quantum leap that takes you from one life to a new life.
Yeah. For years ago, for me, a key moment was when I was doing yoga. And I'd been doing yoga just because I was in lousy shape. And at a certain point, after about 6 months, I noticed, oh my God, I'm breathing. And I noticed my breath. And the breath awareness led to all this other stuff. And that was like a real crack in the sky moment for me. So I'm wondering, is there a way that you can plan on that you can anticipate and build towards those crack in the sky moments?
Yeah, there's all kinds of ways. I mean, breath is one of those ways. Let's do some breathing right now. So there's a study out of Japan that shows that 6 deep breaths, which takes, 30, 45 seconds, 6 deep breaths are enough to create a state shift. So not 4. Like a lot of times people say take a deep breath. They should be saying take 6 deep breaths because that's the magic number. That's the amount it takes to actually create a state shift. So together we're going to take 6 deep breaths and we're going to see how the energy in ourselves changes and see how the room changes. Ready? That's a little different, right? Yeah, so incremental difference just from 6 breaths. And sometimes that's all it takes. Sometimes, 1 minute in a cold shower, 6 deep breaths can completely shift how your body's reacting, how your emotional state's reacting, how your mental state's handling something. We have these tools that are so fucking close, but sometimes we won't do them because sometimes maybe the ego's running the ship and it doesn't want those 6 breaths because it gets those 6 breaths and all of a sudden it's not in control anymore. All of a sudden that awareness, that mindfulness, that consciousness starts to rise up and starts to take its rightful place at the head of the starship, and the ego doesn't like that. So maybe you won't take those 6 breaths. Probably some of you, myself included, will be in a situation soon where those 6 breaths would change our state, but we won't do it. We'll just stubbornly shallow breathe. Because the ego doesn't want to relinquish control. Or maybe, we'll have that opportunity where the knob of the cold shower is staring at us and we'll be like, I don't need it today. Maybe just not today. Or we can make that decision, override, and do what is best for our unified self and turn that nozzle cold, do some breaths and change our state. So I think there's little things like that. And of course, myself and yourself, we've gone down the plant road as well, which can create monumental shifts. But I do all kinds of practices from ecstatic dance techniques. How many people here have tried ecstatic dance? Awesome. That's a good percentage. Love seeing the men in the room who are raising their hands for that, because a lot of times men in particular get stuck with body consciousness and they're not able to unify what's going on in their head and what's going on in their heart and what's going on in their spirit with their body, because at some point, someone told them that they were gay if they moved like that, or some other thing that planted in the man's ego consciousness, and then they get, oh, that looks stupid, or I can't move like this, because it's weird, and you get stuck and you get limited, and then you're closing off one of the tools that have been used for pretty much every culture since the beginning of time has used dance and music to get out of their head. That's the original way to lock into something else and move out of that that lower levels of consciousness and kind of unify the self. So dance is an incredibly powerful tool, and I really recommend that to everybody who has the opportunity. Yoga is another one, like you mentioned.
So one of the interesting things about your own approach to the work you do is that on the one hand you're seeing just the simple physical, spiritual stuff that is going on, but you also are studying the science.
Right.
You're understanding what's happening in the body, physiologically, neurologically. And I'm curious, around dance.
Yeah.
Do you know what is it you think about an ecstatic dance type of experience?
It's flow.
Is opening people up. What is it?
Yeah, it's flow state.
Flow state.
You can read about it in a lot of Stephen Kotler's work, The Rise of Superman. He describes flow state extraordinarily well. It's just a release of endogenous neurochemicals that actually shifts the state of your brainwaves from beta state, which is kind of that frantic looking around the animal who's under stress, usually in a beta state, to that more alpha state, and even that borderline peak alpha, which is like being in the zone, and even sometimes crossing over into theta, which is more meditative. But whenever you get out of your head, you start to drop into that alpha state, and it could be when you're riding a wave, or it could be when you're dancing, or it could be when you're having sex. But it's one of the most pleasurable experiences you can encounter, because for once, you're not just constantly watching yourself as a different entity. You are yourself, expressing yourself fully. So yeah, it's flow state, classic flow state.
Right, and so when the flow state happens, there's certain chemicals in the brain to get released.
Yep.
Right, and there are ways you can do that through physical behavior, through movement.
Yep.
We also do it through the use of things you take into your body, things you might eat, or some supplements, or things like that.
It can help, yeah,
that can
absolutely.
Help. So what would you recommend for folks in that regard?
Yeah.
That open things up in that way that they may not be aware of. That would be an interesting thing to think about. It's like, okay, you can go dancing, but then on an everyday level in the morning when you wake up, you want to get into that open space. What can you do?
I would experiment with a variety of different practices. I think breathing is a great one. And I've got the honor to hang out with Iceman Wim Hof. I don't know if you guys have heard of Wim Hof, but just such an inspiration to be around that guy. And when you're around him, you really see what's possible. I mean, he came over. We filled our pool with like 5,000 pounds of ice, and we had a big event at the house, and he gets there, and it's the morning, and it's a cold morning.
You did this just for him?
No, well, for the company. And
For the whole, yeah. 5,000 pounds of ice.
5,000 pounds of ice for a little whip.
You're in L.A.?
No, I was in Austin, Texas.
It's Austin, Texas. It's hot there.
It can be.
You weren't not doing this in the winter in Michigan or something like that.
That'd be even easier. I wouldn't have to buy the ice.
That's right.
But anyways, yeah, he gets there, he shows up, and we were playing some music, and kind of everybody was feeling good, and the music turned to like house music. It was just a playlist, and he just starts dancing, and then he's dancing. It's like 8 in the morning, like full of energy. The man's, over 60 years old, and then just drops down into the full splits, like cold. I'm like, damn, that's gangster. But yeah, I mean, so he practices a combination of breathing techniques with the cold. So for those of you who don't know, anytime you get in really cold water, what's your first reaction? It's you breathe anyways. And so the cold taught him about how to breathe, and it actually follows another ancient principle called tumo breathing. But anyway, so he uses the cold as a teacher to teach him how to breathe. And so you combine the breath with the cold, and it can reliably create a state shift. And that's what I recommend for people to do just in their own showers. So it's about 30 deep breaths. We just took 6, noticed a little bit of a difference. But if you ramp that up to 30 or 50, you start to feel tingles in your body, and you'll start to be more immune to the cold. Then you crank that thing cold and get in there, and then hold your breath at the bottom of your breath. And that's also part of his practice. And
how long? You hold it for?
You can hold it for a while. So try and
count to 30.
Yeah, well, try and push it. See when you need to breathe again. And just kind of listen to your body. A lot of this is about listening to your body, because the cold will tell you if your 30 or 40 breaths wasn't enough, because you'll get in the cold and you'll still want to breathe some more. So take those breaths. So it's about learning through external stress and external stimulus, so that can teach you how your body should react. So it's a lot about listening. But an ice bath or a cold bath is even better than the shower. I mean, you really feel that. And that's a reliable way to, for free, take a state shift every morning or every afternoon or anytime you can.
What about those mornings when you go, man, I just can't do that?
Yeah.
What's the thing that gets you over the hump? But for you, you started as an athlete.
Right.
You came to performance optimization from the perspective of being an athlete? Were you thinking about it first, like, how am I going to run faster? I mean, what was it that led you into this?
There's 2 paths. Obviously, there was the performance path, but I was kind of done with like really high-level competition by the time I graduated high school. I still enjoyed competing, but there wasn't any real purpose behind it. It wasn't like my identity.
What was your chosen sport?
Basketball. Basketball, but I played a little bit of everything. Probably too many things. I probably could have been better at a few things if I'd limited it. But yeah, I think for me, a lot of this optimization has been to, teach myself how to get out of my head, get out of whatever internal conflict and suffering that I was creating in my own psyche, in my own being, and that's been a real driving force. And also to be able to share the lessons of battle with, people like yourself, put myself, that's probably the strongest motivating factors. I know that if I can find a way and I can show others, then, everybody can enjoy that same thing. So that's largely what drives me now, is just the ability to share what I've learned.
And so was there a particular moment where you went, I can improve myself in this way, and it's not just doing extra push-ups, it's something else going on. It's taking me, in my essence, to this other place. Did that hit you ever at a certain moment?
I mean, there's lots of those moments. I mean, I think the first time you experience what Jamie Wheal and Stephen Kotler in their book Stealing Fire, what they call ecstasis, as soon as you experience that, then it can be transformational.
Right. So what is ecstasis, and the way they talk about it in the book?
Yeah, it's basically just getting out of your head. It's non-ordinary states of consciousness, and they talk about every different practice in that book. Not everyone, but a lot of the different practices from, chemical, pharmaceutical, plant medicine, dance, music, sex, all of the different things that actually change our ordinary states of consciousness. And when you experience that, and you experience something that works, then, kind of a light bulb goes off. And so I've had light bulbs in pretty much every single one of these practices, where all of a sudden it's like, oh shit, that's what that does. Like, I got to get a little better at that. I got to be able to integrate that in my life because I want more of that, because that feels good, and that's going to bring me to where I want to go.
And so was there a first one?
It's hard to say what the first one was. Obviously, when I did a vision quest after high school, I went off in the mountains and with a shaman in the mountains there, did a combination of plant medicines, and that was a huge eye-opening experience where I realized that I wasn't just my mind, that there was something else behind that, and that's the thing I call consciousness now. But that was this really paradigm shifting, plate tectonic altering moment where my entire landscape changed. And I've had that with different plants, different practices. I've had that with dance. I've had that with breathing. I've had that with all of the different ways that I now go about doing it. So I think every time that you discover something new and it really hits, and I've had misses too, like, trust me, I've done some things that I will not recommend in the pursuit of this and searching for it. But when you find it and it clicks in, you experience something, and it's not something that you can really describe. It's something that you have to just offer and show, allow people to see for themselves.
Yeah, one of the beautiful things about your story is how you've turned your life passion into your business. That you're the CEO of a company that is about sharing with other people what you've been experiencing as your epiphanies, essentially.
Right.
How did that start?
Well, I realize that the body is the foundation for all of this. When the body is really loud and the body isn't performing, like when you're sick, it's like you're a tiger that's in pain or a tiger that's hurt. If you go and try to pet a hungry, sick, injured tiger, you're going to get your fucking face eaten, right? Like, they're not going to be kind. They're not going to be
I mean, I haven't tried it, but I assume that's, yeah.
You want a well-fed, like, happy, healthy
I'm
animal.
not sure I want any tiger necessarily, but yeah, okay. Right. Let's just take this where you want to go. Yeah.
People are the same, right? I mean, when we're sick, when we're tired, when we're stressed, when all that, that's the people who have that quick fuse and have that quick temper and are liable to lash out at others and really get extremely selfish because they're in a position of scarcity. And that can start with the body. When the body is screaming for more nourishment, when the body is underfueled, when the body is in pain or carrying trauma, then it's really hard to stack the other things on top of it, proper mindset, consciousness. It becomes way more difficult, so you're sledding uphill. So if you can take care of the body level first, which is really Onnit's prime directive, then everything else starts to get a little bit easier. So Onnit's real goal is to take care of the body and then start working into the mind, and then my personal practices are to go from the mind to consciousness.
And you began Onnit with a single product? How did you get it going?
Yeah, I mean, the main product that we started with was a product called Alpha Brain, and that was just a conversation with my business partner, Joe Rogan. Probably a lot of you guys know who that is. And he wanted to put together the best plant-based nootropic that we possibly could. And I'd had some experience with some different plants, particularly one, Huperzia serrata, which is an acetylcholinesterase inhibitor, which...
Can you say that a little more slowly?
Yeah, acetylcholinesterase inhibitor. So basically, acetylcholine is a neurotransmitter in the brain, and that's responsible for mental speed, focus, memory, clarity. And then acetylcholinesterase is what actually breaks that down and takes it out of the brain. So by inhibiting that, with this plant called Huperzia serrata, you inhibit the thing that breaks down your acetylcholine, so your brain has more of your natural acetylcholine to spare, and then your memory and focus and everything elevates. And we surrounded that plant with a lot of other plants and a lot of other targeted nutrients, and came out with our flagship formula.
Yeah, and that's led to a wide array of things that you offer through Onnit.
Right.
Yeah. Can you just talk a little bit about how you see the company as an extension of this mission?
Well, I think ultimately the company is about the tools, but it's also about how you go about interacting with people. Like the thing that I preach every 2 weeks, we'll have our new employee meeting, and unfortunately we're in a growth phase, so there's always new faces in the room. And I always talk about reciprocity, and reciprocity is really a universal law. It's something that we all feel, and it's, giving equal or more to what you receive. I mean, that's ultimately what reciprocity is, and we're trying to run the company by that principle, both as a manager of employees, so that I'm making sure that the company is giving everybody who works for Onnit something equal or greater to what they're giving in return, and then also for our customers that we're creating a positive reciprocity balance as well. So I think instituting and instilling kind of key principles of consciousness and key principles like reciprocity through the whole company framework is somewhat disruptive in an industry which is ultimately very parasitic, generally.
The industry you're talking about is
all industry for the most part. I mean, that's shifting now, right? But, the idea is a lot of marketers are really trying to trick people. They're trying to trick people into giving their money for something that really isn't worth it. Mm-hmm. And this isn't, there's a lot of great companies out there. We're not the only ones, absolutely. But, there's another way that I think is the way of the future, and that's genuinely providing goods and services that are equal or greater to the monetary value that you're receiving in return. And it's possible to create those win-wins. This whole zero-sum idea that we have about how business needs to work is bullshit, and it's time for that to end.
So a lot of the focus is obviously on physical well-being and strength, and it's aimed, a lot of it is of real benefit to athletes. Mm-hmm. And in some ways, you're kind of in the same market, almost like with protein powder and other things of that nature. Would you say that?
I would, but I don't think these guys want to hear anything more about Onnit, though.
Well, no. The reason I'm going there is because I'm thinking about, are you finding that, I mean, these guys obviously are resonating with the work that you do.
Sure.
Are you finding that more, say, conventional athletes are starting to notice that this world exists, and are they coming towards it for their own, health and wellness benefits?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think I work with a lot of MMA fighters, and you would think that they're on the opposite spectrum of really that, all I care about is the weights and beating people up, and you'd be surprised at the spiritual connection that they reach, because the sheer vulnerability of putting yourself that exposed where you might actually, get beaten up in front of millions of people and going through that process, generally they've really done a lot of work to conquer their inner demons, and they're more open than you would imagine to these ideas of consciousness, because they've felt the difference. They've felt when they get in flow state. Like an angry fighter is a fighter that's going to lose. Like, emotions are not a warrior's friend. So they teach themselves how to get in these altered states of consciousness to be effective. So actually layering in the practices is extremely, extremely valuable for them. So I've seen people who you would never expect go sit in ceremony with me and go through some of these practices, and it's really cool to see that bridge and see this thing collapse. Now, are they comfortable going out and talking about it at this point? Not quite, but that's going to shift, and I think that is shifting. As the public gets more comfortable with it as well, then you're going to see a lot of people who you had no idea were into this kind of stuff come out and start talking about it.
Sorry, I just got a text that just made me think, like, oh my God. What's interesting to me is that how as role models, athletes, especially more popular athletes, better known athletes, can really influence an awful lot of people when they think about their own well-being, their own health and wellness. What you're really working with is a paradigm shift in how we think about the body. Mm-hmm. And how we think about the body's relationship to consciousness and health, but also sort of like really how you take care of yourself in a deep way. And it's part of what feels to me like part of this whole shift that's going on, the consciousness shift that's going on at the moment, is based in the body, and thinking about the body as a spiritual, I mean, I was going to say tool, but that's the wrong word. And so what's interesting to me is how the possibility of working with higher profile athletes to really introduce this to a broader audience, to kids when they're impressionable.
Right.
Right? Do you see that going on at all?
Not yet.
Yeah.
But I see that as the future. When I'm I'm a utopian at heart. I love looking out and projecting into a future where things are different than they are now.
Right.
That's what really keeps me going, is to imagine what that world will look like. And I think these people that I'm connecting with, when they're ready to share, it can make a huge, huge impact, because it'll show people, they'll be able to connect with people that are much different than the people that I could connect with, the people that you guys could connect with. They'll reach a different audience. Everybody has their own voice and the own thing that they'll connect with their people about. So if it's a hockey player, if it's an MMA fighter, there's going to be people who listen to them and go, what the hell? I've been watching this guy for 10 years, idolizing everything he does, and this has been part of his path. Oh shit, maybe I will check it out.
Right.
And that's ultimately the future. But right now, it's just in that gray area where not a lot of people are too comfortable. Now some are, like we just added on Kyle Kingsbury, former UFC fighter, who's very open about his ayahuasca experiences, and Dan Hardy's another one that's come out, and so we're starting to see that. But usually the people who are at kind of the top of their game, they're kind of a little bit hesitant, maybe because of sponsors, maybe because of just the culture they're in, of talking about these kind of things. But that's going to shift.
Okay, so maybe you disabuse me if I get this wrong, but my sense is that the way that most people, including most athletes, are thinking about their body and their health tends to be a more mechanistic model. They're kind of thinking of the body as a car. And when something breaks down, you fix it. And you're looking in, you fix it by replacing the part. Or like you're thinking of the body as a series of engaging pieces, right? Rather than as this interconnected whole fluid thing that's also connecting to consciousness. And that this is part of the shift that's going on in the way that people are thinking about their health. And at Alchemist Kitchen, with the kinds of plant herbal supplements and remedies that we offer, people are using them in a way as we're getting away from the normal pharmaceutical, drive my body as hard as I can till it breaks, and I'll take it to a doctor or a hospital, and then they'll fix it and they'll come back out again. I'll just keep doing what I was doing before. There's a shift going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when we think about all the different relationships that we have, we often externalize those relationships. But I think one of the most fundamentally dysfunctional relationships we have is our own relationship with our body. We're in the most antagonistic, relationship with our body, most of us, even people who are conscious. The way that we talk to our body, our body sends up some signal. Really, the body it's really perfect. It sends you perfect signals depending on what's going on. It's just hard to interpret those signals because we're not communicating through words. It's communicating through pains, or it's communicating through energy in this way. And we don't really know what exactly it's saying, but it's communicating in the best way it knows how. But instead of being like, oh, thanks, body, thanks for letting me know that this thing hurts, because that means that thing's broken and I should try and fix it, we go, fucking stupid body, let me take some painkillers and mask that thing so you shut up, stupid body. That's the refrain that's going in our head. Instead of having that positive relationship where we go, okay, body, I'm listening. What are you trying to tell me? Are you telling me you're tired? All right. Well, what can we do to help you out? Maybe we can alchemize some plant cocktails. That would be nice. Does that feel good? Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. And how about some hot and cold? Would that be nice? I'm stressing you out too much cortisol, too much adrenaline and norepinephrine. Cool, we got to back that off. It's a little too much. And having that interplay and communication with what's going on, I think, is absolutely essential. And the athletes, they kind of get that. They realize they have to pay attention to the small signals that are coming from their body, because otherwise, if you don't pay attention to the small signals, the body just gets louder. If you ignore pain and just keep pushing through, then the pain's going to get bigger till you break. And then you really have to listen. The body will just bench your ass, and then you'll be out of the game. Yeah. So learning to listen to those signals early and even anticipate, what the body might need, just like any good relationship. If your fiance is coming home early, anticipating what might make her happy. Oh, there's flowers and there's some food cooking and there's some, meet her with a big kiss at the door, anticipating what the needs might be. We can do the same with our body. We can anticipate what our body might like and kind of restore that positive relationship where we're really on the same team instead of mind just constantly getting angry at this thing that's causing all this pain.
Yeah. To do this kind of work, did you study biology, chemistry, science? Like how did you get into that piece of it?
Philosophy, yeah.
And Nietzsche's good for this.
It is. Philosophy is about solving problems. It's about solving puzzles. And it tends to aim at the bigger puzzles in classical philosophy, which I enjoy, but the same method works for the smaller puzzles. It's just about, having a hypothesis, testing that hypothesis, seeing if it makes sense, and then being something of an experiential philosopher, I'd like to actually try out my hypothesis. Does this work better? Does this feel better? It's very kind of pragmatic for me. And that's been a big part of it, of course, then listening to the experts and listening to, everybody who is doing the same and on the cutting edge. I think a lot of the time, like the classical educational model is too old, too slow. And I think a lot of the best knowledge out there is from experts on the bleeding edge, from podcasts, from people who are doing the work, actually on themselves. So I think really we all have the opportunity to be biologists and chemists to a certain degree and learn from the real experts in the field if we just apply ourselves and listen to podcasts or courses or read the recent books that are coming out.
Right, but to make the products that you're developing, to play with certain plants and to try them out, you're not just doing it cold. You're working with some people. I mean, how did you get in? How are you verifying that the work that you're doing is grounded and really going to be of use to other people, not just to yourself?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a resource of clinical trials available, obviously, through PubMed, so that's the first place you go.
And did you dive into those? Were you reading those years ago? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I just finished the edits on a book, and we have over 400 citations of clinical trials, and I'm vetting all those and looking through, and we've done that with every ingredient in our products. And then, so that's the first place to start. Also we have neurosurgeons and MDs and psychiatrists, and then we've also taken our products through clinical trials ourselves, our finished formulas, tested through Boston Center for Memory, Florida State University, where we actually tested against placebo and make sure that the combination that we put together is effective as well. So there's multiple layers, but it ultimately, if the science can say, oh yeah, this is going to work, but if I try it and other people and friends and family try it and it doesn't do anything, just because the PubMed says it's good doesn't mean that we're going to put it in a formula either.
Cool. Okay, I think we can open up to questions now. Does some folks anybody here have a question?
Hey, Aubrey, how's it going?
It's good, man.
Good. So one of the things that I noticed from your podcast, because I think that's how most of us know you, is you're really good at forming genuine connections with the people that you talk to, and whether that's an old friend or someone that you're interviewing for the first time. So what do you think is the secret to forming those genuine connections with people you're just meeting?
I think you got to ultimately see them. I think really seeing people, not looking at them and judging them, is a real art that we all should work for. Connecting with who they are, understanding that, they may have had different influences in their life, different upbringings, different genetics, different things that have happened. Maybe there was some trauma, maybe they were seeking love in this way, maybe they were interested in this thing that's different than you, but ultimately they are same. They are you, I am you, you are me. And when you come from that perspective, then you can really connect with someone and learn from them. And I think that's the position where you can form genuine connections, is where you always think of yourself as same, equal, and student, that someone has something to teach you. I'm up here on the stage right now, but if we switch positions, I guarantee I would come out of this with something that I learned from you. And that's the beauty of human connection, is that we get to be mirrors for each other, we get to be each other's teachers, and I try to always remind myself of that, and you do that enough times and it kind of becomes second nature.
Somebody else?
Yes, wanted to know your thoughts on silence or doing nothing and how that can help us get into a flow state. I read an interesting book, Bored and Brilliant, and in it there were suggestions on reducing distractions or reducing information, taking in information. So testing this out, I find that I do actually have more insights when I actually put away the phone or the television, other distractions, and actually doing nothing. It feels like something is still happening, processing or imagination flow. I just wanted to know your thoughts on it.
Yeah, the magic happens when you get really still, and that doesn't have to necessarily be silence. It can be the rhythmic beat of a trance-inducing drum as you're dancing, and that can create stillness and silence. So for me, it's not about silence; it's about stillness. How do you quiet everything internally? Because when you're noisy, you can't listen to shit. You can't hear the whispers of your consciousness. You can't hear the whispers of your heart. You can't hear the whispers of Source, Universe, God, whatever your belief system permits in your vocabulary, whatever that is, that thing that comes to you when you're really still, you're not going to hear that if you're noisy as fuck. So finding the ways to get still and get quiet, even if there is external noise, is extremely helpful. But sensory deprivation tanks are a great example of that, where they not only take away your sense of hearing, but they take away your sense of touch. You're floating in a tank that's the same temperature as your skin. There's no smell, there's no sound, there's nothing. And then your body naturally drops into that lower alpha and theta state where you're open to communication with your higher knowledge and anything else that's available out there. So I think it's really useful to find the ways to get still.
Somebody else over here?
Hi.
Hi.
Earlier tonight, you said something that I've heard a lot in my life, and that is that optimization is not about the end result, but about the process. And that's something I really struggle with as an overachieving creative that's just like trying my best. I don't know. What's your advice? No, I don't know, period. What is your advice for someone who struggles with being okay with the process?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, I think that's something that we all struggle with. I think really you have to understand that there is no actual destination other than one, and that's ultimately when we transition from this life to another life. Like, you got to really change your perspective, because I think we can get caught up in these short perspective games, but there's only life and not life. And life is about how much you can experience. There's a great palliative care nurse who stood by people at their last years, at the end of life, and her name is Bronnie Ware. And she talks about the top 5 deathbed regrets from hundreds of people who she sat with. And you know what? None of them said, "Oh man, I wish I would have made more fucking money. I wish I would have worked harder. Wish I would have ignored my friends more. Damn it, I took that trip when I really should have been grinding." Said no one ever, right? Like, ultimately, at the end of the day, when we're going to transition, it's like, man, I wish I'd have loved a little harder. I wish I'd have laughed a little harder. I wish I would have experienced a little bit more. I wish I would have tasted some more foods and saw some more places and smelled some more flowers and hugged some more people. Like, that's what we miss, but ultimately we can get caught up in this achievement game where we're judging ourselves by what we're achieving and others are judging us by what we're achieving, and we really think that's going to make us happy. It's not. Ultimately, it's just how well we lived every single day. And that's something that's important to remember. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't sacrifice in the short term for something else. Like, I've been talking to my fiance this week, the next 5 weeks of my life as I'm gearing up for my first book launch and still running on it, and things are shifting and a lot of stuff is going on. I know I'm going to have to make sacrifices. I'm going to have to work a little harder. I'm not going to see my tribe as much. I'm not going to be able to play with my fiance as often as I'd like. I'm consciously making a sacrifice, but I'll still find the moments. There's a great scene from the movie Last Samurai, which is a little funny because Tom Cruise is the last samurai. But nonetheless, everybody's working in the rice fields, and they're working away in the rice fields, and he's in the rice fields too, and he has that typical American kind of attitude, and he's just trying to harvest as much rice as possible, and a breeze will blow through the rice fields. And all of the Japanese people will take a moment. They'll stop what they're doing. And he didn't even notice that the breeze came. And that's the difference. The difference is finding those moments, even when you're hustling, even when you're going 1,000%, to stop, breathe, enjoy the experience of life, and know what your real purpose is. So I think really expanding that perspective and really stretching it out, imagine that you're this infinite force of consciousness that has chosen to engage in a body and life on earth, you know? And ultimately, in that form of consciousness, you have no other riches other than your consciousness. You are you. You know, are you going to be like, oh man, I'm so glad I killed it, and I'm so glad I got all those bags when I was on earth? Like, no, you're not. You know, you're going to be like, man, that was a good ride. I really enjoyed that earth ride. That was dope. Like, you want to be that consciousness. Like, man, I treated people fucking good. I experienced everything. I tried my best, and it was awesome. I don't want to do it again quite yet, but I'll go back there. You know, like, you want to be that when you transition, and that's what helps me. And it's hard because you'll lose it in the moment, but you can keep that different perspective. It'll change the game.
Somebody else? I'm trying in the back here.
I got you, man. You'll get this question. You don't need to raise your hand anymore.
How's it going, guys? First, I just want to say thanks for coming out and sitting with
pleasure.
us and sharing. My question is, after having an ayahuasca trip or any of these big shifts in your life, did you ever, after one of them, spend time away from your social circle, away from the people you always spend time with? And if so, how did you constantly bring yourself back into, like, just remember that this moment in time is for me, and I have to figure these things out? Because personally, for me, there are times where, because I'm kind of going through that, and there are times where it becomes enticing to go out or do something or hang out with my friends, and I just know that during this whatever time period, I should, like, not that I shouldn't be doing it, but there is a mission to do X, Y, and Z first.
Yeah, man, there's always going to be times where you got to go in the cave, and you got to respect that when it's your time to go in the cave and separate yourself from everybody, because you got to just sort yourself out. You can't be anyone else's mirror right now. You can't, offer anything to anyone else, and you got to go get your shit straight. That time in the cave is absolutely, I think, essential. But then it's also about surrounding yourself with people that you want to go on this journey with. People that you can learn from, people that inspire you, people that can help you in this process, and really being okay with it. It's a very funny thing. Like, we will break up with a girlfriend or a boyfriend that isn't suiting our life and that we're not happy with, but we kind of feel like friends are, it's just my fucking friend. Even though they annoying as shit and constantly taken from me and don't offer anything, it's my friend, so I guess it's my friend forever. Like, you can transition in your social circle around people that you're going to serve the best and that are going to serve you, and I think that's also important as well. You're under no obligation. Your only obligation is to experience as much as you can and share as much with the people that are open to that, and open to the love and connection that you're able to provide. And so I think making sure that you're spending time with the people that nourish that part of you and the people that you can teach and learn from, and then also knowing when it's time to get the fuck in the cave.
Cool.
You pick somebody.
Yeah.
So first off, I wanted to offer something. You were talking about beta and theta waves, and just an interesting little tidbit. Dolphins echolating directly at you take your brain state from beta to theta. So I don't know if that might be something interesting to you.
Cool.
Yeah. So look into that, and it really blew my mind when I first learned about it. So
Yeah, I went swimming with the dolphins when I was younger, and it was fucking incredible. Like, it was not like the SeaWorld dolphins, which I think are just like secretly pissed off and hungry for fish.
Yeah.
That's sad. But like, this was at this dolphin research center in Florida where they were in a bay, and they just came by and hung with the researchers, and fucking totally transformational.
When they echolate, it does something to your brain. So
Yeah.
that's one. Two, so I started on the medicine path about 3 years ago, and I sat in a bunch of ceremonies and done a bunch of combo, and the state changes have been seismic. But what I'm having trouble with is supplementation, because I've played with a lot of different supplements, and I haven't felt empirical proofs in anything that I've taken. And there's so much out there. How do you approach that? Like, you're at a company and you create your product, so you know what goes into what you're doing. How are we supposed to? Like, I'm not talking about OnFit, as your company. I'm talking about in general. Like, how would you approach that for a product that's not coming from your company? So like I'm looking out there at the world at large, trying to find something real, trying
Yeah.
to find something that actually works, that I can point to and empirically say, hey, that's doing something for me. So I messed with modafinil for a little while, got me really sick.
Yeah, me too.
So, and that was putting that away and then trying to heal from that. And then, I guess looking for something that's real.
Well, I mean, you're experimenting and you're trying to figure that out. And I think that's definitely part of the process. Listening to people who have done the experimenting as well, listening to people who've tried all of those different things. And, we could talk about all of the different ways to enhance cognitive function. And I've had similar experiences with all of the Adderalls and modafinils, and anything that's speedy is like a nightmare for me. I'd rather do just about anything in the world than, take some Adderall. Like, it's just miserable for me. I know some people enjoy it. But so you go down that path, find someone that's similar to you, that's experimented, look at the research around what's around. But really, it's just being willing to try out new things and figure it out. I don't think there's any direct one single source that you can necessarily go to. But, what for you, let's see if we can figure something out. What for you would be something that you would like to improve the most?
Health.
In what regard? Immune health, brain health, physical health?
All of the above. I'd like to be more specific. I don't want to hop.
No, it's okay. I'm sure, as I said, everybody here is a different version of you. Whatever you're experiencing, they're experiencing to some degree. So nothing that you could possibly say is completely selfish. I promise you that.
Honest accountability in companies. We go for trust. Instead of somebody trying to sell you snake oil, because there's so much of that out there.
Sure.
So, you as somebody who's in a position of power and knowledge when it comes to that, how would you guide people who are looking to not get fucked over by snake oil? Because at least it's so much time.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, he's saying that, there's some distrust around companies who are just trying to peddle anything. And again, that's that vampiric mentality. Sell anything, get the money, doesn't matter if it works. And that's something that we stand against. And there's other companies that do that. I'm not going to say, oh, just trust me, bro. But you could trust me if you wanted to. And I'm willing to say that. But nonetheless, I mean, I think it's, it can be challenging, but you got to trust all of your senses. I think we all have an innate bullshit detector, and I think that gets more finely tuned, and just see if your bullshit detector goes off at any point. Look at the research behind it and then figure it out. I mean, I think one of the things that really the foundation of all this before you even start fucking with supplements is, what's your diet like? Like, what's your base diet? Like, have you tried a ketogenic diet? Have you tried to alter your macronutrient profile to fire up the engines in your body so that you're a dual fuel burner and are actually, using ketones as fuel? Have you made that attempt? Because that is a powerful fucking thing for cognitive performance, for physical performance. I mean, if I'm going to start anywhere, I'm going to look at the diet first, unequivocally. And I think that's a really important place to go, because if you're constantly chasing blood sugar swings through your whole life, it's going to be really difficult to reach the levels of optimization you're looking for. And, so I would start looking there. And yeah, sure, there's people who are peddling, bullshit diets too, but this one is not a bullshit diet. I mean, this is actually foundationally changing the way that your body utilizes fuel. So I would look there first.
Can you say a little bit more about that diet?
Yeah, so the body uses two primary fuel sources. There's glycogen, which is basically sugar that breaks down from all the carbs, and then there's ketones. And this is a natural switch that the body makes when there's more fat and protein available in your diet than there are carbohydrates, which weren't all that common back in our ancestral lineage. A lot of times we had more fats available than anything else if we were in a hunter-gatherer society. And so by switching your diet to a profile that's more like 20% protein, 50% fat, 30% carbohydrate is like a good place to start. But you can even drop that even lower. You'll start utilizing ketones as fuel. So MCT oil, something that you have in your elixirs upstairs, which naturally converts to ketones, which is like this alternate fuel source. I think you can liken it to being a jet that's being fueled by one particular type of fuel source, which is the glycogen, and then you all of a sudden turn on that other jet, which is fueled by the healthy fats in your diet, and you're now coasting on both jets. And I think Mark Sisson has a great new book coming out that's talking about how to transition into that diet. And the impacts that I've felt personally from, not even going full ketogenic, which is cutting out basically all the carbs and just burning fuel from ketones, but also becoming that dual burner, has been immense, both for cognitive health, physical health, performance, energy. I think it's a really good place to start. And, so start getting your body adapted to, putting in dietary fat again.
And until that book comes out, what is the best source you think for people who want to discover more about that diet?
Yeah, there's a guide, there's a beginner's guide at our website that I know that we just finished working on, and you can find that if you Google Onnit and ketogenic diet. That's a good source. There's a lot of other good podcasts on it. I think Joe Rogan did a really good podcast with Dom D'Agostino, so you can download that podcast. That would be good. I did a podcast with Mark Sisson about it on my show. You can start to learn about it that way, but really, just Googling ketogenic diet, you'll start to understand the principles. And then there's also exogenous ketones, which is not something that we sell. But this is a way to kind of round the corner and give you a taste of what that benefit might feel like. There's a company called Kegenix, Kegenix, and you can experiment with some of the exogenous ketones or just get some MCT oil, which will also be kind of like the first step to giving you a taste of what that feels like.
All right, so we have any questions in the back over here? I think you guys are kind of, no questions in the back. Okay.
Thank you. I just want to start out by saying, Aubrey, you've been such a huge inspiration for me this year. So thank you for all you do.
You're welcome, brother.
And next up, when you were talking originally, you were talking about how you refer to yourself as a utopian, and that's something that I'm very fascinated by. So do you see utopia as something that's achievable at a grand scale? And what needs to happen for that to be a reality?
So that's something that's troubled me for a while, because it's easy. Like, you read in a utopian novel, one of the best is Aldous Huxley's book, Island. So if anybody's interested in that book, Island, he hypothesizes an island called Pala that's away from the mainland, and so they can create this kind of isolated bubble. And I think in a lot of people, they're thinking about, we'll create this little culture that's away from everybody else, and we'll just do it on a small scale. And obviously that makes sense, because if you can control the environment and control the external stimulus, then you might be able to actually pull it off. But that's really not the game that's most interesting to me, because then what about all the other people who are suffering on the other side? They're same. It's not like I just want to have a few people feeling cool and then everybody else is all fucked up on the other side. That doesn't really work. Like, I don't want to be the guy with 5 years of beef jerky in my basement while everybody else is hungry, and I'm hiding out there. Like, that's not the game that interests me. So the game is, how do you make this on a larger scale? And I was a little bit kind of pessimistic. I was like, man, how is this going to happen? And I had this podcast with the author Starhawk, who wrote probably my favorite utopian novel, which is The Fifth Sacred Thing. And she's, rad. And, she explained to me, she goes, well, we have a saying in permaculture that the problem is the solution. So yeah, there's a lot of people, but it's going to take a lot of fucking people to actually fix the things that we've done to get us to this point. So that disadvantage now, the problem that you're seeing is, the world is wildly overpopulated. That problem can be turned to an advantage, because then you have this workforce that's actually capable, and this brain force that's actually capable of changing the things that need to be changed. But that starts with consciousness, and I think consciousness is the only thing that we can do. We can provide all of the, food downstream and water and healthcare and all of this stuff, but if we don't affect the consciousness of people and get people who want to start changing the world, who want to give their resources freely, we're going to have a big problem. It's one issue that I had with Bernie Sanders. Like, good. I'm glad that you care about people, but if you're just going to focus on taking the wealth of the wealthy, what are they going to do? You try to take someone from someone, they're going to fucking hide it. They're going to push it to a different place where you can't get it. They're going to move out of the way. They're not going to actually share the resources that you have. You can't tax people on money they've already owned. And most of the wealth of the world is not being currently churned, it's being currently hoarded. So how do you get people and all of these resources and all of this potential energy that could change the world? How do you get that out to the masses? Well, you got to open their fucking heart. That's how you got to do it. You got to open their consciousness. And how are you going to do that? Well, community, ritual, ceremony, all of these things that are now becoming possible. And that's one of the reasons why I think the best thing that we can do is start supporting organizations like MAPS. Jade is right here. If anybody wants to give a donation to maps.org, Jade, right over there. I have a campaign going now called The Cure is Near, which is a charity campaign for both MAPS and Hefter, who's doing the psilocybin research. And they are changing the fucking paradigm, like absolutely changing the paradigm on how to heal trauma, how to open people up to seeing those universal laws, those metaphysical truths like I am you and you are me. Because if you actually believe that, and I have a full sandwich and you're fucking starving and I don't give you any, it doesn't even make sense. It wouldn't even be possible if you actually believe that metaphysical truth that you wouldn't want to share those resources. The problem is that they're clouded in their own delusion and they don't see that. So we got to make them, help them, have the tools to see that, and then they'll be gladly and willingly sharing these resources and mobilizing all of these people to start making a significant change. So that's hopefully the future that we're headed to.
What's up, Aubrey?
What's up, man?
You spoke a little bit about philosophy, so I'm just going to throw one word at you, and you let me know. Destiny.
I think there's potential. And I think potential is a lot more interesting than destiny, because I do strongly believe in free will. I think that's why this game was created. But free will can't exist unless you have awareness. And I think your potential increases the greater your awareness becomes, and the more actual free will that you'll have. So really, I think you have one of many destinies. When I've been deep, deep in ceremony, I've looked at my life and all of the possible options. Okay, well, keep partying like an idiot and then, die at 62 and not quite actually contribute to the world in the best way. Or, get caught up chasing money. And I see this like branch of different possible options that could be my life. And depending on the choices that I make will depend on whether I get to what I believe would be one of the optimal outcome states, which is one of a billion quantum realities, but in the general realm of something that I'll smile at when at the end of my life, I transition to the other side and I look back and like, that was a good outcome. Of all things that could have been, that was a pretty good fucking outcome. And that's dependent on these choices that we make every single day, every single moment, the choices we make leading up to this and the choices we make from here. So I think awareness and potential, free will, those are words that are a lot more interesting to me than destiny, because destiny kind of robs you of that autonomy and that agency, that ability to make the changes, that ability to believe something into existence, which is, I think, the true superpower that all of us have. Be able to, with our own belief and with our own intent, change ourselves, and in doing so, change the world around us.
Thank you.
Hey, Aubrey.
What's up?
How's it going? Unfortunately, we're still living in an age where the war on drugs is not only the name of an amazing indie rock band. So my question is, given that you're a public figure who promotes the safe and judicious use of psychedelic drugs, do you ever worry about or have you ever experienced any retribution from the powers that be? Shout out to MAPS, by the way.
No, I think that this idea of the powers that be having this nefarious plan, to really fuck us up and keep things, keep us down, and this whole idea, I think a lot of that is just our own paranoia, and it's not really there. I think what it is, it's a lot of people who are scared of the things themselves. Because you look on the micro level, and you'll talk to somebody about this, they're scared of what might come up, even if they do MDMA, which generally is about the most pleasant of these things that you could experience. But on the precipice of that, realizing that there may be some fucking truth that they have to reconcile and they have to deal with, they'll be sweating bullets. So the easiest way to make sure that you never have to even consider that as an option is to make that illegal, push that away as far as you can. And that buries it deeper in your psyche and keeps these other forces, which also want to thrive, in control. The ego, these other things that are delusional, in control. So I think this idea that, yes, of course, you can get in trouble with the law, but then you talk to actual cops and you talk to actual people on the DEA, and they're like, we're not trying to fucking bust a dude who's lighting candles and having a little psilocybin and listening to dolphin sounds. You know, that's not how we're trying to spend our time. Like, truly, like, occasionally you hear horror stories, and horror stories do exist. I'm not saying that's not the case, but it's the rarity. You know, that's not their prime directive. That's not their prerogative. That's a waste of time for them. They don't want to do that, you know. So I think a lot of it, people are a little bit more scared than they need to be, and especially if you're not trying to profit from it, you know? I mean, I think that's one area where you could really get in trouble, is trying to profit from it. And then also if you're just being reckless, you know, if you're just recommending it haphazardly and saying, like, just do it at all costs, whatever, as much as you can, you know, that's a different story. But, so I think that, you know, a lot of people ask me that, but, you know, I don't think that those concerns are really have that many teeth. And fuck, if so, this is what I'm supposed to be doing anyway, so if that's the way it goes down, that's the fucking way it goes down. You know, you got to be comfortable with that. You got to be able to expose yourself. If you're going to be, you know, a warrior in any sense, you got to realize that an arrow might fucking hit you. And if the arrow hits you, you better not be, oh, I shouldn't have been a warrior. I should have been a potter. You know, like, you got to realize, like, I'm a warrior. I may get slain on the battlefield. I may have to go out on my shield. That's the way of it.
Somebody else? Coming back over here.
Get you next.
Can I ask a quick follow-up on that?
Yeah.
Oh, I shouted out, so I guess I will. You mentioned so many different types of psychedelics, and I want to experiment. What is something for someone who's young and new and wants to expand their mind and consciousness?
I think the first place to start is not with the psychedelics. I think the first place to start is, have you gone in a flotation tank?
No.
Okay, start there. Have you gone and done an ecstatic dance?
No.
Okay.
I signed up for the one here, 2 days from now.
Oh, hell yeah. Great, that's a great start. Shamanic breathing, holotropic breathing, another great place to start. Like yoga, try all of these other things first, get used to these other states, and start working into a place where it's less about the actual mechanism, you know, whether it's psilocybin or MDMA or whatever, even ayahuasca, and more about the setting, the people who are providing it, and like what that is going to be around, because that is far more vital than anything else that you could take. But first, start with the stuff that's available and ease your way in, and then find somebody in a group that you're really comfortable with. I do most of my work in countries where it's legal, like I go down to Peru and do my work there, and find the places where the masters live, and, you know, basically pay the medicines a house call. But there's other ways to do it. But first, you know, experiment with the things that you can. Yeah.
How's it going?
Good, man.
I'm curious, like, in the dark times, you know, when shit is like in a tailspin, what's been, you know, I feel like there's like no hope. What's been a strategy for you, or what have you seen work for other people? And then the second question is, more importantly, who do you got in the Cody TJ fight? I know you know them both, so it'd be cool to hear your take.
Yeah, the Badlands, the dark night of the soul, those times where everything seems to be collapsing on you. The thing that really works for me is a lot of people are a lot better at preventing themselves from going deep down into those things, but I go really all the way down, you know, instead of trying to claw my way back up and breaking my fingernails on the rocks as I'm scrambling to the surface, but I'm just getting heavier and heavier and going to hit the bottom anyways. I'll just go, all right, well, what's down here? Let's start digging. Let's see what's at the bottom. Let's just keep going down, keep following this down, and then find something. Find that gem, that pearl, that thing that I can bring back, that lesson from that experience. After I've mined all the way to the end of that feeling, find that lesson, and then I'll get my hand on it, and I'm like, oh, this one's good. You know, I can bring this one back. I can tell people about this one. This one might help somebody. This one might help me. This one might help the world. And then I'll have that in my hand, and then I'll start the ascent back. It's like, you know, going into Hades and then coming back with the treasure, and then I'll bring that treasure out and I'll share it with people, and then that will be part of the process that helps me, through those moments. But really, it's that commitment to service, to say, I'm going to find something down here that not only is going to help me, but it's going to help somebody else. And then when I find that thing, I'm going to come back up, because that's what I'm here to do. And so I think that commitment to service, as they say in South America, para el bien de todos, for the good of all. Like that commitment to service, go down there, find what took you there, find how to get out of it, and then bring it back and share it.
You mentioned you finished a book that's going to come out.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us a little bit about the book?
Yeah, the book's called Own the Day, Own Your Life. So it's about going through every phase of the day and figuring out the most optimal way that you could live that phase of the day, all the way from the moment you wake to the moment you go to bed. So it kind of puts everything together.
24 chapters?
Well, you're sleeping for some of them.
They could be short.
Yeah, there's 16 chapters. So roughly the amount of time that you're awake. It's not directly hour by hour, as there's certain things that can take a little bit shorter or longer, but yeah, roughly taking the whole arc of the day.
Cool. A couple more questions.
And Cody's going to win.
Sorry.
I think I'd love TJ. TJ's a good friend, but if I had to pick, I'd pick Cody, because I think he's just a little bit faster, and I love, watching the way he mentally, we're talking about the UFC fights that are going to be here in New York in a few days, for those of you who don't know, and I happen to be friends with both the guys fighting, so it's like my two little brothers are fighting, and it could go either way. They're both amazing warriors and champions, but I love how Cody's able to, in the eye of the storm, like he fought an almost unbeaten champion. It'd been years since this guy had been beaten, Dominic Cruz, and Cody was in there, and I'd been talking to him and working with him, and I'll be seeing Cody this week and talking to him about really being in the moment, and he was so in the fucking moment, he was dancing in the ring against a champion that hadn't been beaten in 3 years. He was like, he pulled his tattoo gun out of his waistband with his hand and started shooting his feet and dancing. I mean, he was like so enjoying every moment of it, that mental fortitude, and when the stakes are that high, I've never seen anything like that. I mean, I was literally just in tears of awe watching him perform at that level, and he's fast, and I think, he brings that mindset in there. I don't think anybody can beat him.
All right, so this is something you got to explain to me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like an old punk rock geek, right? And when I hear you talking about consciousness and meditation and yoga and higher vibration
Mm-hmm.
and love and connection, and then I hear you talking about the UFC battles, and I'm not seeing this somehow. And I may not be the only guy in the
Sure.
be the only guy in the room
Sure.
who's having this problem, but I wouldn't mind you.
It's not an uncommon question. What I see when I see these people who have chosen that path, and especially the people at the highest level, they've made an agreement that they are going to provide the ultimate resistance for another human being who's going to provide the ultimate resistance for them. Because ultimately, we need resistance to grow. We need the grindstone to sharpen our sword. We need that force that is going to draw the very best out of us. Cody needed Dominic Cruz to bring that paradigm-shattering performance into existence. He needed a champion that was that good, that he could define himself against, that he could sharpen his skills against. And I think the fighters make that unspoken pact. I'm going to show up and I'm going to give you hell. Just like the world is going to give me hell, just like everything is going to give me hell in life. I'm going to show up and I'm going to give you hell, and we're going to see what you're made of, and you're going to see what I'm made of. And so really it's a very, intense, and it can be ultimately very damaging to the actual physical being, but that's a choice that they make to find the hardest road of resistance, so to see ultimately what they're made of inside. And I think it's a very sacred and spiritual pact, not for everybody, but when, that's the way that I look at it. And as I get to know these guys better, all of them kind of share that bond, and it's this kind of unspoken thing.
I can see that in the culture, right? But me, I can't watch it. I can't see somebody get hit like that. I mean, that's me, right? It makes me really uncomfortable. And I'm thinking about, violence and the role that violence plays in our society. And there's an undercurrent of violence that's so deep throughout our society. And in my own work, I would love to be able to lift myself into a place where I'm not contributing to that.
I think you're labeling it violence when it doesn't need to be that. I mean, I think there's violent consequences to the chess match, right? But ultimately, this is two people playing chess using their bodies as the knights, the bishops, the rooks, the pawns, and the body takes damage, for sure, but they're playing chess. And that's the beauty of the match. And the chess has consequences. It's like battle chess, you know what I mean? But it's different than violence. I think violence has a different intent. If someone actually comes in there angry, that's not the way that you fight. A great fighter comes in with dead calm and real presence. And if you watch him at the end of it, in real violence, there's not hugs and people aren't friends, you know, forming lifelong bonds with your competition after a real act of violence. But after this, after you've both tested each other to the limit, there's a respect and a friendship that grows. So while the consequences might be damaging, I think it's quite far from, you know, anything that we would know as violence.
Cool. Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Well, a couple more questions, and then I think we got to tie it up. Are there any women with questions?
Let's get his right here.
Hey, it's awesome being here. You've been a huge inspiration in my life. You know, podcasts are a weird thing where it's like a one-way street, or I've listened to so much of what you've had to share, but you have no idea who I am, right? So it's kind of strange. But I remember listening to your first episode on ayahuasca when I was like working in my dad's office, miserable on antidepressants, and I heard about the medicine, and I just literally flushed the pills down the toilet and was like, okay, I need to go do this thing. So, and that started a huge journey for me. But my question to you is, you know, how do you balance your life? Because one thing I'm seeing is like, you know, what's so common today is people chasing money, and what I find in uber successful people is they actually have like an aura of, on average, right, they have an aura of unhappiness to them, but you seem like, you know, the real deal in person, which is really awesome. How do you balance your life with all the pulls of, you know, success and fame and all these people that want to get to know you, and how do you balance it? Because, you know, for me, I started a business, and I'm getting a 1.1% of what you're experiencing now in that department, and, you know, every...
It's all relative. You can't say that, you know, for you, it's the same. You know,
Right.
The scale's different.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but you know, what I realized is, like, with each project, with each connection, is this huge sort of exvolution of energy. How do you sort of bring your energy back into your center and keep going, you know, with your life on the path?
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason that on the flyer for this event, I wrote, the work starts inside, right? Like, the work starts inside, and most of the time the work ends inside. The external stuff that we think is the big deal is not the fucking big deal. It doesn't matter. The external stuff is the thing that forces us to do the internal stuff, even with the fighters that we're talking about. That external opponent isn't the thing. The opponent is the internal opponent, you know, your own fears, your own insecurities, your own, you know, sense of quit, your own self-doubt, all of these things. So everything that you're experiencing, everything that I'm experiencing, as long as I don't get caught up in the actual thing, but I realize, oh, wow, this is a pressure that I'm going to have to respond to. This is a challenge that I'm going to have to rise to. This is a puzzle that I need all of my faculties to solve. Then I can process it and do the work. But if I get caught up in, oh my God, I can't believe what's going on. I have these many people working for me, and what if they lose their job because I don't make the right decisions and we stop making money, and you get caught up in that thing, you can't take all that on. What you really got to do is, how do I bring the best? How do I do my best? How do I do the work every day? How do I look in the dark places? How do I explore the nooks and crannies of my psyche that might cause those self-destructive urges to manifest their ugly head? You know, the work always starts inside, and as you do the work inside, you'll see the outside grow. It's like Hermes Trismegistus, who says, as above, so below, as within, so without. As you get this straight inside your heart, inside your head, everything else will straighten out around you.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
Here,
Oh, there you are.
how do you eliminate that hurdle? How do you clear that hurdle or eliminate that blockage of dealing with rejection?
Yeah. Well, the ego loves to find rejection. It's simultaneously its greatest fear, but the thing that it seeks out the most. And it'll find it in every different opportunity. And I think the way to approach any fear that we have is to expose yourself to that fear and realize you're going to be okay. You're going to be fine on the other side of it. So lean into those things that are uncomfortable. You're afraid of rejection let's say in love life. Okay, great. Talk to as many people as you can, get rejected 100 times, and realize that you're going to be okay, and that the way you think about yourself doesn't have to change based on the way that other people think about you. You start to know who you are and not use other people's opinions or other people's actions to influence at all your understanding of yourself. All right, you're afraid of rejection in business, or your idea is great, pitch it 1,000 times. Go out there, lean into that thing, keep pushing forward through that thing, and realize that you're going to be all right, because you're not your identity, you're not your ego self, you're a fucking interdimensional, infinite being that's currently experiencing you. So that thing can't get rejected.
Cool. And on that note, I want to thank Aubrey for being here with us tonight.
Thanks, everybody.